folks. Welcome to our City Matters. Today is the third Monday of the month, and therefore we have Evan Sorensen with us. Evan is the founder of New England Institute for Marriage and Family Therapy, and it's based in Bedford. And so I have him on to talk to us about some issues relating to sometimes people have problems with different things, and we had a list of topics that we thought we'd share with you. So welcome, Evan.
Thank you. It's good to be back.
Thank you so
Good to be
much.
back, yeah.
And today we have an interesting topic.
Yeah, this month I decided to do something a little bit out of the ordinary, and what I thought I would share with folks today is what I might call some sage advice from the masters. And essentially what I did is I went through my contact list and I searched for couples that I know that had been married anywhere between 10 and upwards as much as 30 plus years. And I thought I would go to them just out of curiosity and ask them, you know, if there were one or two things that you've learned that are really important or critical to making marriages work, what would those be? And so it was really interesting, some of the feedback I got.
That's a nice positive topic.
Yeah.
Great.
It's a good time for that as well, too, with the holidays and the new year coming up for people to kind of, you know, I know it can be stressful, so to kind of think about some things from a positive angle is a good thing.
Great.
So.
I see you have a list here.
Yeah, so I thought I would share with you just some of the findings and literally share some of the quotes. I guess part of the thinking is, you know, there's no need to reinvent the wheel. Let's go to the folks that have, you know, been together for a number of years and have figured out what works, and let's just kind of learn from their wisdom as opposed to trying to figure it out for ourselves. So it's one of those places where we can kind of work smarter, not harder, and so I thought I'd share with you some of that feedback today. So I'm going to literally read through some of the quotes. So the first one that came to mind for me was a gentleman that I've known for a number of years. He and his wife have been married over 30 years, and when I asked him, you know, one or two things that you figured out, here's what he shared with me. The first one was, first of all, this idea about a commitment through thick and thin. And he said that when we have problems, we are both determined to make it work out. And that's great advice, because what he's not talking about there is, you know, some of the things we've talked about in past shows is this idea about kind of, you know, stonewalling or putting the wall up, or if my feelings get hurt, I kind of, you know, stop participating in the dialogue. And really what he's talking about here is that they've learned that no matter what the situation is, we have this kind of no-quit attitude, a respect for one another, and we kind of have this commitment towards one another to kind of work it through, to talk it out. We never quite give up. And so that's inconsistent with the research that we found that couples have when they're struggling, which is, you know, kind of avoidance of problems, sweeping things under the carpet. And so that was one of the things that he mentioned he's found to be very helpful. The second one he mentioned I thought was equally interesting. And he said that they have frequent expressions of love, both verbal and physical, and praise, a lot of praise within the relationship for things that their partners are doing. And he said, quote, "This has had enormous payoff in our relationship." So lots of expression of love, both physical and verbal, as well as lots of expressions of praise and appreciation within the relationship. And he said by focusing on that over all of these years, he's found that it's really helped the marriage in some very positive ways. So it's good advice.
Do they have children?
They do have children. That gentleman, I want to say, has a total of about 4 or 5 kids, all grown adults now, but yeah, they have a number of kids. So
Children matter.
they do matter, and you know, and it's helped give him some perspective. Now, what's interesting is I asked his wife as well, you know, so what are your ideas? And she focused on this idea about kind of the little things matter, and we see that again and again, I think, in the research, is that people talk about, you know, the things that make relationships work. It's not rocket science. It's not overly complicated. In fact, there have been books that are written on this, you know, kind of Keep It Simple, Stupid, and Chicken Soup for the Soul, things along those lines are all geared on that idea about kind of let's keep things simple because that's where the truths are. And she said something very interesting. She said they have this ritual in their life where when they go to bed, every night as they go to bed, she says, they say, "I love you." And the first thing that they say when they wake up in the morning is, "I love you." So they finish their day with an affirmation of their profession of their love or commitment towards one another, and they begin it as well too. Very simple, but she really felt like these little points of connection, these little ways that they express their appreciation and love for one another, go a long way. And it's kind of like the glue that helps them get through the difficult times as
And
well,
it's
too.
that consistency.
Yeah.
It happens all the time.
Correct.
And it's expected, or
Yeah.
it's there.
Yeah, it's a regular part
Regular.
of the relationship. And, I've mentioned this guy, John Gottman, a number of times, the big researcher in marriage and family therapy, and, he talks about creating this culture within the relationship. It's a culture of praise and recognition. It's about looking for the things that matter, and consistently, not every once in a while, but it becomes a regular part of the culture in the relationship about praise, recognition, appreciation. Similar to that, there was another woman that I spoke to who's also been married well over 30 years, and she said that what she's found is helpful is complimenting each other on how much you cherish them and what they bring to the marriage. Cherishing them, right? Same idea, fondness, appreciation, praise for one another. It's about looking at my partner, and I am appreciative for all of who they are and what they bring that contributes to the relationship. Everybody has kind of a unique gift or talent or an expertise. Sometimes it's our personalities. With my wife, she is just unbelievable with the kids in a way that I'm not. Not that I'm a bad dad, but she's got these gifts in that area. And what this woman was talking about is we have this good understanding or awareness of what our partners bring to the table, and we express that in terms of letting them know what we cherish and admire about them. And that's very consistent with all the research that tells us that that's one of the key skills that couples that are doing well have.
Just to ask a question here, are these people married?
Oh, yes.
Or they're not just living common law marriages?
No.
Where
no.
sometimes the escape is too easy in common law, perhaps,
Correct.
or in living together.
Okay.
I was just wanting to know.
Nope, they've all
Committed.
Yeah, committed marriages. They got the license, so to speak, to demonstrate that. But they found a way. Again, I'll share with you one individual who's been married 10 years, but the vast majority of these people I talk to, 15, 20, 25, 30 years. And so, it's hard to make something last that long if you haven't figured out a few tricks along the way. And
Also, just because you have a piece of paper that says you're married, people go through divorces all the time. So
yeah.
it's not necessarily the paper that keeps you together, but I think it can help.
It can help, just like kids can help, but at the same time, you need more than that. And it's what I do for a living. So I see a lot of the folks that come in that are struggling, and sometimes the suffering's so great that children or a piece of paper isn't enough to keep them together. So there's something going on here with these couples that is beyond any kind of obligation or legality that keeps them together. They've kind of figured out a way to relate to one another that leaves them feeling kind of in love and cherished and wanting to do life with this person,
Together,
which is pretty amazing. So, so those are a couple thoughts. I've got a few more. Here's a couple that I really enjoyed. This is from the gentleman that I referenced, has been married 10 years, and he said something very important, actually two things that are quite important. The first one, he said, be candid with each other about likes and dislikes, whether you think it would be uncomfortable truth or not. Not mean, just truthful communication. That's absolutely critical. You may remember, if we go back to maybe the first or second time that we had our talk together, I talked about the importance of open communication. And not just talking about the easy stuff. It's also a willingness to talk about the things that are kind of uncomfortable and difficult. And for folks that sweep stuff under the carpet or they suppress their feelings or emotions, we know without any shred of doubt that tends to contribute to bitterness, and frustration and distance within the relationship over time. So he's actually referencing something very important. He's saying that in his marriage, he's learned that it's better to talk about things in a respectful and kind way, but talk about even the difficult things and work them through as opposed to kind of avoid them. And
isn't that sometimes the reason why people go to a therapist, is that to have a third person or a neutral person kind of be a referee?
Correct. Yeah, any I'll show my cards here. Any good therapist, I think, however, their goal is to get that, particularly in couples work, our job was to get those couples to be their own therapists. So yes, initially people come in because
They're
they
learning.
they don't have the skills or the tools. Our job is to kind of, among other things, to coach and help build up those skills. But we need them to get to a place where they internalize that well enough that when they're at home on their own, it's as if this part of their brain comes online and says, well, what would the therapist tell us to do here? Or what is all this therapy I've had? How does that inform how I relate to this person right now? So we have to move beyond the referee to them becoming their own therapist. But yes, that's often a common reason why people come in. Again, we talked earlier in our one of our earlier sessions too about the idea about kind of seeing therapy as proactive as opposed to reactive, not to wait until the end to try to get those skills, because there's a lot of damage done. But when you first notice the signs of difficulty, to get into counseling, then you're more open, I think, to kind of learning.
So the walls
the
aren't
skills.
so thick and they're not
Yep.
so high.
It's a great way to put it. Yeah, exactly. So this gentleman also had a quote that he used as a guide in his life, in his relationships, and it was from the Dalai Lama. And the Dalai Lama's principle or idea here is, he says, "Don't let a little dispute ruin a great friendship." Don't let a little dispute ruin a great friendship. And for me, partly what that brought up is this idea about keeping things in perspective, right? Oftentimes we have a disagreement, and it's as if that disagreement now that's all I see. I'm kind of focused only on what's wrong, and I forget that there's so much good in the relationship. You know, we kind of hold on to grudges and we suppress things, and we kind of carry that along. If I had a dollar or two for every couple that came in and said that they have a disagreement, that they don't talk for days on end, it's just kind of basic sound advice that says find a way to work it out. Don't let a little dispute, because oftentimes the things we're arguing about aren't the big, huge issues. They're the little frustrations, the little disappointments that show up day to day, but we kind of blow those up into a much larger issue.
Or we just want it our way, and we're not willing to give a little.
Yeah.
Because in the marriage, you have to give and take, correct?
That's right, compromise, negotiation, things along those lines.
Sometimes one has to give a little more
Yeah.
than the other at some points.
I'm also a big believer in that, it's important that we know our own history and how that history and those experiences have shaped us in terms of expectations, or you hear people talk about it sometimes in terms of triggers or insecurities that we have. And sometimes those are the reasons why a situation turns into something much bigger than what it needs to be, or even sometimes it turns it into something that it's not.
Something underlying.
Correct.
Right.
So to some degree, I think good therapy really
helps.
encourages us to kind of dig a little bit deeper in terms of our own self, our own exploration, self-understanding, and understand what are those triggers or insecurities within me that can take a little dispute, as the Dalai Lama says, and turn it into something much bigger than what it needs to be. So I think perspective is really important. Sometimes I tell couples that, listen, the person that caused disappointment to you, the person that kind of hurt you in some ways, is also the person that's loved you in some ways that are really remarkable. And so I'm trying to at times challenge the mind's tendency to kind of focus on what's wrong and to force it to kind of look at the big picture. And the big picture is, in any committed relationship, there's ups and downs. There are times when my needs don't get met or my partner disappoints me or hurt me. But there are also times, if I'm objective and I really think about it, there are lots of places along the way where this person has really been an amazing gift or lover or whatever.
Don't put it all in jeopardy. Don't
Correct.
destroy it and throw it all away.
Yeah.
It's worth working on.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And so anyways, I think that's what he was learning when I asked him. I think that's, he borrowed that from the Dalai Lama, but it's just kind of good life advice for him. Helps keep things in perspective. It leads people to that place we've talked in the past about, the simple things about learning how to apologize, learning how to say I'm sorry.
Exactly. Goes a long way. Or bringing flowers.
That does go. There are very few women that I meet that would say that doesn't help.
I don't know what the woman does for the man.
Well,
when she has
that's
to
a topic
apologize.
for another show.
When she has to
probably.
apologize, well, make a candlelight dinner for him, I suppose.
That's a good start. So anyway, there's these little things that we learn to kind of help us kind of repair and get back on track in our relationship. So I thought those were a couple pieces of good advice. There's a couple others that I've got if we want to
Sure.
move forward. One of the things that kept coming through in this very informal research I was doing was a number of people referenced their faith life. They found that kind of being part of a religious community or tradition or some expression of their faith was important to them, probably in lines of a few different things. One person put it this way. They said that the values that were part of their faith encouraged their best self, the best part of them to step forward. So in those times when there's disappointment or my partner's needing something from me, or that my best self steps forward. And the worst self, so to speak, those parts of us that can kind of get bitter and vindictive and sometimes retaliate or hold grudges or things along those lines, that was often inconsistent with what their faith was encouraging them to do. So in a sense, their faith helped them be a better human being and a better partner because it promoted these values that are important when we look at the ways that people, kind of repair and recover from disappointment.
It's a foundation.
Yeah.
If they've learned it as a child,
Yep.
principles,
Correct.
then that's kind of more embedded. It's kind of more in heart.
Yeah. Yeah, whether as a child or an adult, but I guess maybe you touch on something, which is when I'm part of a faith community, there's lots of exposure to those beliefs, so whether it was from a young age or whether it was as an adult, kind of being part of that community on a weekly basis. And for a lot of people within faith communities, there's stuff in between Sundays, so to speak, that regularly connecting with that is what helps kind of, internalize those changes. So that was one of the things. There were two others that came out of it, but that's one, is that it kind of changed them in terms of their values, and that then showed up in how they related to people in their lives, which was really...
A family that prays together, stays together.
Yep. I went to a conference once where the speaker talked about the importance of prayer life between a couple. And the speaker said that from their research, now I don't have anything to back this up, this is just kind of, I guess, third-hand information, but I'm going to trust the source of it. This person said that from their research they found that couples that prayed together on a regular basis, the percentage of couples that did that actually end up divorcing was like 5 or 6%. So couples that pray together on a regular basis, regardless of what their faith background is, but couples that pray together on a regular basis, 94% of them stay together, stay married. There's something about that kind of
connection,
which actually makes me think of the second point that came out of some of this research that I did, is that people often felt like being connected to something bigger than them. It's as if it became a constant in their life. It was always there for them, no matter what they were going through, whether it was a struggle in the relationship or something outside of the relationship that was a struggle. It was something they could always lean on that was there for them. I had a gentleman just today that came in that lost his home in a fire, just like that. He was burning some shrubs outside or whatever it was, an ember got underneath the deck, caused the house to go up. And having something beyond himself, some kind of community or a connection or a relationship, let's say, with God, that helped him find some strength and perseverance and belief and faith, helps people get through those difficult times. So oftentimes it becomes the one constant that's a part of their experience, which is really important to people. The third area that it showed up in terms of faith was this idea that being part of a faith community gave them lots of opportunities for socialization. So whether it's after the service or whether it's things that are coming up between the week, lots of opportunities to kind of connect with other people, whether they're having coffee fellowship after the service or something else. They expanded their friendship network. It leads to, you can imagine kind of getting together with other people, so forth and so on. So, we know that kind of socialization and being...
not withdrawing.
Correct, is an important part of mental health as well, too. But these couples, I guess, were finding that was an important part of their marriage. So, so it led to socialization. It led to opportunities for learning. A lot of, let's say, churches these days have Well, so for instance, my wife and I at the church we belong to, over the years we've put on 3 marriage workshops that we get a number of people that come to. I should probably mention that in January, the end of January, we'll say the 3rd or 4th Saturday in January, I'm doing a talk at St. Elizabeth Church in Bedford. You know, we expect 100 to 150 people
Wow.
to come in for that, you know, short 1-hour talk about marriage. And so oftentimes faith communities create these opportunities for learning, to expand our wisdom and our knowledge and things along those lines. So they were finding that that was helpful for the marriage too, and that it helped in terms of their learning. And then the third thing that it did, a faith community, was it gave them opportunities to contribute to something bigger than themselves, whether it be on a local level or a global level. So this time of year at the Christmas holiday, you see lots of churches and non-church settings that have the giving tree, you know, where you take a tag off the tree for an underprivileged child and you go out and get them a gift. And so for a lot of people that made them feel good individually and as a couple that they were making a difference in their local community, in this case giving a kid who might not otherwise have a gift that they had a hope for or a positive Christmas. It gave that child something to kind of feel good about, and it made the couple feel connected in this shared activity.
Right.
And then on the global level, we see lots of stuff from, I remember churches that were going down after Hurricane Katrina and after tornadoes and rebuilding homes, mission trips to other parts of the world where they're helping out underprivileged individuals. So these faith communities seem to be really important too in helping keep marriages connected. And keep
They
people.
work together as a team
Yeah.
through all these missions
Yeah.
and or whatever they do in the community.
Yeah.
And it's vital for them to keep it together,
Yeah. Yeah.
to keep on the work.
Yeah, yeah, it's becomes a shared experience that the two of them have, and anyways, I'm a big fan, I guess, of those types of things.
Right.
You know? There's a certain amount of individuality that's important for marriage health, and then there are those places where we kind of participate together in doing things. And I think probably the faith community, now that I'm talking about it out loud, offers both of those opportunities. But it's one of those areas that, again, I don't make this stuff up. I'm just gathering the data.
Right, exactly.
And there's a lot of people who are saying that kind of becomes instrumental. They thought that was really key in keeping the marriage positive and healthy.
Yeah, I mean, when you have these couples who are married 60 years, you know, they got married when they were 14 back in those days.
Right.
And you say, how in the world,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Can you reach 60 years married? What does that mean?
Right.
You know, that's your...
Right.
How does that work, right?
Well,
That's what we're saying.
these are some of the ways that it works. And, I remember, I feel very blessed in my marriage as well, too. My wife and I got married relatively young, early 20s. And one of the things that we talked about was, because we were getting married that young, we had a shot at, being able to be that couple who had celebrated their 50th anniversary. And now, fortunately, we have enough, I think, of these skills in place that help us achieve that. But, that's a real... These folks that have been married 10, 20, 30, 40 years, they have something to offer that's not always easy to find, and that's why I like this type of research. It's really nuts and bolts, concrete advice about things that people can apply in their own marriages. So,
Not that these people don't have struggles.
no, of course not. No, they just find a way to kind of work it through a little bit more positively.
We have 3 minutes left.
Okay, so there was one other area that showed up, which I don't think anyone will be surprised to hear. It was around listening. And I have a good friend of mine in my life by the name of Dan Post, and Dan put it very well. When he talked about listening, one of the things that he's learned, he said, I believe the key to a successful marriage is engaged listening, to be present and genuinely interested, but silent except to acknowledge what is being said. So there's a couple pieces there that are really key. Engaged, present, listening, and to be silent except for when I'm acknowledging my partner's point of view. So that goes back to all that stuff we talked about earlier, which is around non-judgmental communication and listening. And non-judgmental communication does not include interrupting or adding my 2 cents. That is not non-judgmental communication. Interrupting and adding 2 cents. What non-judgmental communication includes is really 3, I guess, very important pieces. One would be to be curious which means I'm genuinely interested. This is what he's talking
Mm-hmm.
about, being present and genuinely interested
Turn the TV off.
in this in this person's point of view. I'm
Right.
genuinely interested. I describe it therapeutically sometimes like the news reporter showing up on the scene. The news reporter doesn't go to interview you and interrupt you and tell you what he's thinking. The news reporter is always interested in your story. Tell me what happened. You know, how are you feeling? What happened next? They're very interested. And couples, when they're having, particularly when they're having disagreements, they have that respect or that capacity to listen non-judgmentally. So that was one. They're curious and they listen. The second one was they postpone their agenda, meaning, again, I don't interrupt or talk over. I set my agenda aside and I genuinely show up with all of who I am, and I want to hear your point of view. So I suspend my agenda to understand yours. Very important. Suspend my agenda to understand yours.
That shows
Critical
how
skill.
important the other person is to you.
That's right. And people like to feel heard and listened to and validated. And when they feel validated, they settle down a little bit. And
right.
it makes the communication work more. And the third and last piece, because I know we're about at that time, if I can do those first two things, then I open myself up to direction. And what direction simply means is I'm willing to kind of ask you, what can I do to help the situation? Or we're both asking ourselves, okay, what can we do to kind of try to solve this problem? You know, how can we work together? What are the, it goes back to that compromise and negotiation stuff. What are some possible solutions? We're more willing to participate that way when we've listened in the ways that I've just described. So really, really critical stuff. And again, not rocket science, really straightforward, but it's the application that becomes, the commitment to it that becomes difficult. But if couples do that, we can pretty much guarantee you will have a more successful, meaningful relationship with your partner.
It's amazing how, when you talk about it, how simple it sounds.
Yeah,
And
it's
how
very straightforward.
and how it's just not, 50% divorce rate. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
it's ridiculous.
People don't have the tools. We go back to that piece about proactive help as opposed to reactive.
Well, I hope this show really goes
Yeah.
far and wide
Good.
on Facebook,
Yeah.
Our City Matters, and YouTube, Our City Matters.
Yeah.
I appreciate you coming
You're very
in.
welcome.
And I hate to cut it off
Yeah.
because it's a beautiful session
Yeah.
here that
Yeah.
that you just
Well,
shared with
it's
the
been
people.
a pleasure to be here, so thank you so much.
And I thank you for everything here. And turn the TV off, folks. Listen to your partner.
Yeah,
Have a date night, right?
that's right.
And spend some time talking and listening.
You got it.
All right, I thank you so much, Evan.
You're welcome, Deborah.
And hope for the best. Hope for the best in the new year. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, everybody. Happy New Year.
Thank you. Same to you.
And we'll see you another time on Our City Matters. Take care.